Russia and India may have long and cordial relations, but they are at the opposite ends of the sporting spectrum, at least when it comes to chess. On one end, India is taking giant steps towards becoming a rising superpower in various sporting disciplines, and on the other, the once dominant powerhouse, Russia, is falling off the grid. The latest blow comes from chess's governing body, FIDE, which has decided to uphold a blanket ban on Russian and Belarusian players. This is because of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. The ban was already in place, but there was a proposal to lift sanctions for children under 12 years of age and players with disabilities. Voting, of course, took place during the General Assembly of FIDE. This included representatives from all member nations. But eventually, the verdict came against Russia and Belarus. It all started when Kyrgyzstan's Chess Federation proposed to lift restrictions on Russia and Belarus. Western nations heavily protested against the proposal, but ultimately it was a crushing defeat for Russia and Belarus. Following the verdict, Russia accused FIDE of bowing down to the West.
The West and Ukraine are putting open and undisguised pressure on countries within FIDE. This is no secret, everyone knows about it. Unfortunately, FIDE is also not free from the politicization of sport and the world of chess in particular.
The Kremlin is basically accusing FIDE of siding with the West. But in reality, the ban isn't a one-way decision. In many ways, it was more democratic than Russia's own regime. 41 delegates voted to maintain the ban. 21 voted in favor of lifting the ban entirely, and 11 votes abstained. So it's not just the West that does not want these players to be readmitted, Russians and Belarusians, it's also other members. One of the biggest names in the world of chess, of course, has strongly opposed the inclusion of Russian and Belarusian players. Take a listen.
Sanctions against Russia and Belarus should only be strengthened as long as the war continues, as dictatorial regimes are trying to legitimize the war against Ukraine by using sport and athletes.
Magnus Carlsen, of course, made that statement just a couple of days earlier, quite timely that. FIDE is basically obeying the International Olympic Committee's decision. The governing body, in fact, has maintained full transparency on the subject and conducted a fair vote.
We believe this approach upholds FIDE's commitment to inclusivity while respecting the international framework.
Yeah, it's not just Magnus Carlsen. Vishwanathan Anand there as well, being one of the strong voices coming forth, especially in this matter that has clearly torn apart Russia in particular against the rest of the world. And here's the thing though, the FIDE president is Russia's former deputy prime minister, Arkady Dvorkovich. If any politicization could have happened, is accused to have happened, it would have been from Dvorkovich's end. The Russia-Ukraine war has united the sporting world in maintaining a ban against Russia and Belarus across sport. It's not just FIDE that has imposed heavy sanctions on these countries. Football's governing bodies, that's FIFA and UEFA, have suspended participation of both international and club teams from Russia since 2022, leaving the once vibrant Russian team in shambles. So much so that the Russian national team has been forced to play friendlies against Vietnam to keep their football ambitions going. Even in the recently concluded Paris Games, I'm of course referring to both the Olympics and the Paralympics, both these committees ended up banning the participation of Russian and Belarusian athletes. A few exceptions were made, yes. Athletes who had no connections with the Russian and Belarusian militaries, they were allowed to play under the neutral flag. They weren't allowed to participate in the opening ceremonies, though. Even in chess, it's not like the athletes aren't allowed to participate. They have the option of doing so, but under a neutral flag. Russian players, including two-time World Championship runner-up Ian Nepomniachtchi, are allowed to participate, just not under the Russian flag. So the sanctions aren't meant to target athletes, but the countries that are waging the war. Despite Belarus not being actively involved in the Ukraine conflict, The country does support Vladimir Putin's war efforts. The actions of banning athletes from these two countries is an attempt by the sporting governing bodies to punish Russia and Belarus, whether it's football or the Olympics, and of course now chess. The world is slowly trying to get Russia and Belarus cornered. The ones, of course, who are most affected in this war are clearly the athletes.